Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
Oh, welcome to the Gamblin Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Money Mainville. Some stuff's going on. The Barnett Howard Williams rundown looks like this today. Texas Tech beats West Virginia. Arizona State and Iowa State go to the Big 12 championship game. And Tim DeRuyter was fired. Neil Brown was fired. Gus Malzahn gets a new job. Pat McAfee's tweeting about the West Virginia opening, making it seem like somebody he knows might be getting the job.
Lee Corso.
Coaching experience. Otherwise, there's also some transfer portal news. But here's the deal today. If you're just here for the transfer news, we're already getting comments about the transfer news. We had a whole show planned. That drops 15 minutes ago. We will probably do the transfer news stuff Wednesday on Patreon, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. So if you're only here for the Patreon news, maybe the transfer portal news, maybe we do that at the end of the show a little bit, but we are going to discuss all that other stuff on the BHW law firm rundown first, and then maybe get to it or do it. Okay, so there's that right off the top. By the way, Barnett Howard Williams, the best law firm based out of the state of Texas and otherwise. They are in the Fort Worth area, but they do work across the great state of Texas. Family law, catastrophic injury, criminal, whatever you need, they do. They also have a robust Title IX operation over there that can help you out. They do it all. You just call them up, find them on bhwlawfirm.com. All right. Yeah, so some comments already saying transfer portal. This guy, Diego, says, I understand why you love the Big Ten. Don't know what that has to equate. I'm not waiting till Wednesday. Well, you have to. He's going to make an impact day one, says Joey McGuire. Well, we're making an impact day 272 or whatever it is of the college football season. We're into the championship week. What a roller coaster. What a wild ride. We will also do season recap stuff on Wednesday. So we'll just do the West Virginia game today. Let's get into, as always, the rest of the Big 12 first here, Money. And last week, we needed a wild assortment of things to happen. Kansas needed to beat their third straight ranked opponent. Let's see. Arizona State needed to beat BYU. There was a bunch of stuff that needed to happen to keep Texas Tech and West Virginia alive for the Big 12 title game. All of that happened. All of it happened. I started to, get my willies up a little bit, thinking, wow, what is going on? This is crazy. And then, we wrote, talked, discussed how it all hinged on Colorado for Texas Tech to continue to be in the Big 12 title picture. They beat Oklahoma State 52-0 on Friday. And that kind of stopped all the fun. Also beat UCF 28-14. And Gus Malzahn decided to take a job as the offensive coordinator at Florida State.
Yeah, Kyle did a really great job at kind of laying the stage and being very poetic about West Virginia and Texas Tech kicking off at 11 o'clock on on Saturday and what the implications could be for that game. But at the end of his lovely and motivating speech, I said, "Hey, Kyle, Colorado and Oklahoma State are playing on Friday, and I think you'll know by the end of that game what's going to happen." And very early into it, it was clear that Colorado was just going to wax them. Really, really ugly game in a lot of ways. I watched maybe the first 3 or so possessions, and Colorado was already up 21-zip. It was dominant in a fitting way for Oklahoma State to end their season. Kind of surprised they haven't already made some changes on their staff, and that an 8-4 team has kind of beaten them to the punch there. A little surprising to me, but yeah, I think Gundy will be there next year. But I think he's going to have 2 different coordinators next to him if that fan base is going to be happy at all with that decision. And then, yeah, I was kind of surprised by Utah being, I think they came into this game 9.5-point underdogs or something near that. And I was just licking my chops. This was my wild card and Chuck's picks and my triple play. And of course it cashed because money don't miss. And Utah doubled up on UCF. I think Gus Malzahn has been checked out of that job for quite a while. Pretty rough video I saw Friday night after the game of him walking out. You could kind of tell, it was going to be his last time walking out that field and, giving his wife a hug and a kiss, and they're talking, and they walk into the tunnel. And as he's walking out to the tunnel for his last time as UCF's head coach, there's just fans all around the tunnel to chant, "Fire Gus, fire Gus." And just brutal. And I guess he decided to beat the athletic department to the punch there, and will now be at Florida State as their offensive coordinator with Mike Norvell, also trying to save his job, much like Gundy will be. But very, very interesting decision there. I don't know if I would have walked away from that buyout. I don't have enough pride for that. You can go ahead and fire me and give me my $13 million check and I'll be all right. But yeah, some wild moves in the Big 12 that I think have already happened and will continue to happen after those 2 Friday games that, didn't really look like much, but certainly had big implications on the championship game and, what those 4 programs in particular are going to do in the next few years.
You also have Kyle Whittingham, to my knowledge, has not retired yet. That was the thought before the season. But how do you – same with Gundy. How do you go 20 years with so much success and then retire after a dud?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like you want to chase a little bit. I don't know. To me, it feels like you want to chase because you don't want to go out like that. So I would assume maybe Whittingham's back again, even though they named his replacement this summer. Gundy, yeah, you have to have 2 new coordinators. The defense was literally the worst in the Big 12, arguably the worst in the country. And they lost, 1 or 2 of their best players early, and then 5 or 6 players across the season that were in and out due to injury. But, man, what a wild ride there for Oklahoma State. They finished winless in the conference. Couldn't happen to a better program. Yeah. The rest of the conference, Arizona State hammers Arizona 49-7. They are the best team currently in the Big 12. I don't think it's much argument here if you're power ranking anyone in the conference. Arizona State's the best team in the conference currently. You beat them a couple of months ago, but they've gotten better, I would say.
Yeah. And
they have finished really strong. They finished 10-2, 7-2. They cashed their ticket into the Big 12 title game. Arizona flopped this season as well. Brent Brennan, haven't seen news on him yet. Do we see news on that tomorrow, or do they kind of just say, all right, year 1, let's try year 2? Because they don't have a lot of money over there at Arizona to be throwing around buyouts and whatnot.
Yeah, they have no money. So that will certainly be an interesting decision. I think it was a bad hire from the start. And it's certainly looking like it's going to play out that way. At least it did this year. And I don't know, when the next time you're going to have a star caliber at quarterback and wide receiver with the way they performed this year. So Interesting situation at Arizona. Arizona State looking like a wagon right now. Cam Scatterby has obviously been terrific. Really, really fun watch. Hated seeing Jordan Tyson get injured in that game. Did not look good. Probably collarbone the way they were supporting that. And that's just a bummer to see because I agree with you, Rob. I think they're the best team in the Big 12 right now. And assuming they win the conference championship, which I would probably pick them to do right now, what that could do for their CFP run, I think is pretty brutal, but hopefully they can rely on the run game and get a Big 12 team deep in the playoff run.
Kansas State, Iowa State, the other big game. I was told this was going to be snowy. Did not seem snowy to me. But it was 24th ranked Kansas State falling to Iowa State. They finished 8-4, 5-4 in Big 12 play. Ranked, but 8th or 9th in the Big 12 now. Iowa State wins after a big second quarter and then kind of held on for the rest. Avery Johnson with one of the worst safeties I've ever seen in the end zone to kind of finish that one off. And then they make a 5-point game, an 8-point game with a field goal in the red zone, and Iowa State wins. They rush the field, first 10-win season ever. The historical implications are amazing there for Matt Campbell and Iowa State. Proud of them. Great job. They've won 10 games in the regular season. I did not think they would do it after losing to Kansas. They needed to win 3 straight. They did. They'll be ranked, I don't know, top 15-ish. Arizona State should be top 15 for sure. In the next college football playoff ranking, Tulane loses. They'll probably drop back some. I think you have some, let's call it space there now for the Big 12 champion to for sure get in the playoff, especially now that your 2 highest ranked teams are in the playoff. BYU does beat Houston. Doesn't matter. They also win 10 games, 7-2 in conference play. 30-18 over Houston. Houston really competitive down the stretch. Any thoughts on those 2 games?
The safety by Avery Johnson was pretty brutal. I think at that point in the game, it was only a 3-point game. And, taking a safety there is pretty brutal and proved to be a margin that Kansas State would not be able to overcome. Iowa State had another field goal in the fourth quarter, I believe. I would think that safety was 3rd or 4th play in the fourth quarter. So pretty brutal there. Did not watch much of the Houston BYU game. Kicked off a little too late for Grandpa over here, but still on the Shieldwood train. Would love for that to be one of your first calls for your DC opening. Been really impressed with what Houston's defense has been able to do this year. Obviously gave up 30 in this game without BYU having a great passing attack. So maybe some concerns there, but I think that's been a really interesting defensive group to keep an eye on throughout the Big 12 season, despite how terrible they have been offensively.
Yeah, really bad. BYU's defense, surprising to me. They just had such a high rate of turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in their first, 6 games in the Big 12 this season, they just had an outrageous amount of interceptions and otherwise that, obviously led to their hot start. Baylor beats Kansas. Speaking of hot finishes, Baylor was, let me get this right, 2-4, 0-3 in conference play when they came to Lubbock. Since that game, they are 6-0 in conference play and have hammered a couple of teams. Now, they lost to Colorado, BYU, and Iowa State. Okay. They also lost to Utah with the first half of Cam Rising. That was their 4 losses. Since then, they beat Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, TCU, West Virginia, Houston, and Kansas. Texas Tech is a bowl team. TCU is a bowl team. West Virginia finished 6-6. Has 3 bowl teams and 3 non-bowl teams. But they beat Kansas, who had just beaten 3 ranked teams. I'm not trying to say anything about Baylor. I'm just saying I think their record reflects their schedule a bit. That they had a tough start to the schedule and an easier finish to the schedule. But to win 6 Big 12 games in a row is impressive. To win 6 Big 12 games straight after your coach is basically fired. I'm sure they wrote up the contract before that Texas Tech game. And to have your rushing attack do what it did across the last 6 games, to have Sawyer Robertson do what he did across the last 6 games, to have that offense cooking like they did to finish the year, just a wild change from where they started to where they finished. Big 12 power rankings, I mean, is Baylor 3rd?
Not close, yeah.
And defensively, I thought they played really well defensively down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that's been the critical thing. I think defense, and I think the way that they established the run has been the story of their season. I think a lot of credit gets given to Spavital for that, and rightfully so. I mean, you look back at the BYU and the Iowa State games, 63 rushing yards in the BYU game, 79 against Iowa State. The Colorado game, you lose on a Hail Mary, and then Utah, you ran the ball 40 times, but you only averaged, 2.7 yards per carry. So I think them establishing the run down the stretch was really huge. And I thought that was almost surprising for me because I thought that was going to be one of the best parts of Finn's game at Baylor. But they end up making the switch to Robertson in the way that he forced the defense to kind of play that too high safety look that everyone's running in college football now. It really opened things up for them to do their run game by committee. Pendergrass was obviously a huge part of that. But, yeah, I mean, if you can play good defense and you can get off the field and then you can control the game with your run game, you're going to win a lot of football games. And so I think that's really been the story of the season this year for Baylor in my eyes.
Finally, TCU wins as well. They finish 8-4, 6-3. Baylor finishes 8-4, 6-3. They beat Cincinnati 20-13. It was 20-7 at halftime, and just kind of lulled to sleep there in the second half. Cincinnati scored late in the fourth quarter, 6 points, 20-13 the final. Satterfield 3-6 in the Big 12. Not a great finish. Basically the opposite of Baylor. They started strong and finished poorly, though. You kind of look back at that Pitt game, too, and say, man, they gave that one away. That would have been a bowl appearance if they held on to that lead. But Cincinnati misses a bowl for their second straight season in the Big 12. And I've not seen a lot of unrest from Cincinnati fans, but I would assume it's out there on that hire and that long-term plan at coach, because that's not a fan base that wants to miss bowl games.
Yeah, I think they've got to get some Big 12 talent on that roster. I think they've got a couple of guys on the defensive end. I think they got a good quarterback, but I think that the holistic roster construction just needs to be better. A strange season by TCU. I think it's a season that, if you look at the numbers, kind of looks similar to Tech, like the way that they've had a really explosive offense at times and just been hindered by a really bad defense. I mean, they're right now into the season, they're 15th in EPA offensively, but 91st defensively. Like very, very stark contrast there, similar to what it is for Texas Tech. But yeah, strange year by the Horned Frogs. Strange year in the Big 12, really in general. I know we'll get into some more season recap stuff on Wednesday, but just a lot of unexpected madness in the conference for the first time when it really felt like it was wide open. And it came down to yesterday.
It did come down to the very final day, and not just in the weird way that, maybe a Texas Tech or West Virginia could squeeze their way into the Big 12 title game. It came down to BYU, Arizona State, Iowa State, Colorado all needing to win to get in, and those 4 teams really having a legitimate opportunity to play for a Big 12 title game. And I like that. I don't like that some conferences are just wrapped up in week 12 and they're just kind of playing games waiting. Like the American was. Army and Tulane have been clinched for 2 weeks. There was, some intrigue, I guess. Memphis beats Tulane late, but it didn't matter. Tulane's still going. It just meant that Army would host. So that's going to be at West Point.
That rules.
A quick look ahead to the conference championship games. On Friday, you have the Conference USA Championship, Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State. Rich Rod? Potential openings here in the Big 12. UNLV Boise State will play on Friday night as well, a Mountain West Championship game. If Boise wins that, they will be the 4 seed in the college football playoff, I would assume. If Boise State loses that, I think potentially the Big 12 could get back to the 4 seed, Boise, UNLV. And I think potentially, obviously it's the conference champion that goes in. So Boise State would then fall out of playoff contention, and UNLV would be in the playoff as the 12 seed. They're ranked 22 currently. I believe that's the AP poll ranking there beside their name. It could be the playoff ranking. And then Tulane Army is also on Friday night American Athletic Championship. The Big 12 kicks off at 11 a.m. Iowa State, Arizona State, the SEC at 3, Georgia, Texas. Texas beating Texas A&M. Interesting game there. And then Penn State, Oregon. Ohio State losing to Michigan again. They can't fire Ryan Day, right?
I would.
They can.
That Michigan team?
Brutal. And then Syracuse beating Miami pushes Miami out of the ACC championship game and pushes Clemson back in. If Clemson wins, they'll be in the playoff. SMU, probably not. I don't know. SMU might still stick around, but a 2-loss SMU team. It's interesting. It's going to be interesting. Otherwise, you have Marshall, Louisiana, and Ohio, Miami in the Sun Belt and the MAC, respectively. That's conference championship weekend. All right, let's get to West Virginia, Texas Tech. Great game.
Best of the year.
Incredible second quarter. Best of the year. Maybe the best Big 12 game that Joey McGuire has coached start to finish. The other one, probably West Virginia 2 years ago, that finished 48-10, both quarterbacked by Baron Morton. The first quarter was a little bit rough with the touchdown and then the catch they had to review. That was obviously out of bounds. The touchdown was not a touchdown for Mason Tharp. You kick 2 field goals. Things are a little bit restless. Then you score 29 in the second quarter, and everything's fine. The offense was unleashed. You obviously figured something out in the second half last week, or at least went back to your roots and just went all tempo all the time. You still ran the ball. The offensive line was opening massive holes against West Virginia. And I really couldn't tell if West Virginia I couldn't tell if West Virginia just wasn't into it as much because they knew they had a lame duck coach and had already clinched bowl eligibility and were going to be where they were regardless, or if Texas Tech really did just kick their ass, because that's what it felt like. But, man, the defense played well. Not well enough to save Tim DeRuyter's job. He was fired this afternoon. Him and Marcel Yates coming together from Oregon. They'll both be gone. The pass defense for Texas Tech, we know the numbers. One of the worst in the country. Rush defense, decent this season, but at times also bad. He gave up a bunch of points, but had a good game against West Virginia. I thought it might save a job or two. I honestly thought Marcel Yates was gone regardless because the secondary had been so poor, but you start looking around, it's a bunch of freshmen, first guys getting snaps and whatever else. But just in the game flow, that second quarter was one of the best quarters we've had from a Texas Tech team in years. Obviously the North Texas second quarter was amazing as well, but this is a Big 12 opponent that's going to a bowl game.
Yeah, and what's crazy about this too is you wrap up your regular season now 8-4, best finish in 15 years. That was the second game of the season that you won by more than one possession, and your first since North Texas.
Yeah, and the only Big 12 win.
Yeah. And I mean, like the rest of the wins, like Oklahoma State, 8 points, Iowa State, 1 point, Arizona, 6 points, Cincinnati, 3 points, Arizona State, 8 points. Like you've gotten by the skin of your teeth most of the season. And man, it was weird. Like I kind of felt this way about the basketball game too. This past week, I was telling my pops, I was like, this is like perfect Thanksgiving week sports. Like I'm not swaying this game at all. Like it's on in the background. I'm watching it. I'm enjoying it. But like I'm not having to sweat through this game. Like I feel like I usually have to, and especially so this season. Like you've just had to be dialed into the TV, all 60 minutes to see what would happen. But this one at halftime, it was like, wow, like are we actually going to run away with a game? It just felt like you weren't capable of doing that to this point in the season, and you really hadn't been, outside of a UNT team who doesn't have the same defensive coordinator at this point and has had one of the worst defenses in college football. So for you to do this to a West Virginia team that was respectable, I think it's fair to say. Like I don't think they're a Titan in the Big 12. I don't think that they had the year they wanted to have, but definitely a team with a pulse. But you stomped them, and that was surprising. Like I'm not saying like hang the banner, we crushed West Virginia, but man, it was just surprising to see this team run away with the game after the precedent that had been set throughout the entire season.
Yeah. Baron Morton looked really good. Sorry, as I click off the wrong thing here. Baron Morton looked really good. 359 yards, 28 of 41. His completion percentage across the last 2 weeks is much better than it had been. He did throw the one interception that was kind of it was a good ball. It was a bad decision to throw it in that spot. It kind of got Conyers rocked. But you built enough of a lead to see Will Hammond. He ran one in late with another spin move. I'd like to get that out of his repertoire, but it worked in the end zone. He did score the touchdown. Taj Brooks, 23 carries, 188 yards, 8.2 per, 3 touchdowns, and they left him in on the drive and gave him every single carry till he got 1,500 yards. The first back-to-back 1,500-yard rusher in Texas Tech history. The most prolific running back in Texas Tech history. And to all the people that say only because he stayed so long was he that good, I say, get out of here. He's a very good running back, and in this system, to demand carries, with this offensive coordinator, to demand carries and to be the best player on the team for 2 straight seasons, to have 1,500 yards 2 straight seasons, the touchdown run where he gets hit, spins around, keeps his balance, goes in anyways. This is maybe the first game, not of his career. That's probably unfair to say to the offensive line. It seems like the first game this season, though, where he's running through big holes without having to stand there and find them.
Yeah.
There was a couple of runs that he just got to sprint into a hole, and you see how much of a different running back he is when he has holes in front of him. 188 yards. Landon says, was Taj's run in the third quarter the best run you've seen from him? It was one of them. It was one of the best. What's funny is his debut in Houston against Houston in the Matt Wells era. He had 2 long runs, and I thought, oh wow, he's big, but he's got some juice. You hadn't really seen that from him since. But it looked like he had fresh legs to finish the year. He knew what the goal was. He went out and got it, 188 yards. I would have loved to have seen him get 200, but they pulled him after 15. If that's the last time in a Texas Tech uniform, incredible run. I'm glad he got his timeout and kind of standing ovation that they do in baseball where you stand on top of the dugout and wave your hat. It was really, really special. If I was Taj Brooks, I would get an agent and go prepare for the NFL draft. And I don't know, come to the bowl game and watch Jacoby Williams and Cam Dickey try to take over the mantle. There's no reason right now. You're far enough away from all the other milestones in Taj Brooks's world that you don't need to go get anything else. And so Taj Brooks likely, I don't know anything, but likely his last game as a Red Raider, and it was a special one. And good for him. Good for him to end the year healthy. Micah Hudson, I see the comments. I said at the top of the show, we'll probably get into that on Wednesday, but just of the guys that were participating in the game, I thought everyone looked really good. Excited for Josh Kelly to get 1,000 yards. The first time for Texas Tech to have a 1,000-yard receiver and a 15-yard running back in the history of Texas Tech. The first time for a 1,000-yard receiver since 2018. Antoine Wesley was the last to do it. Now Josh Kelly has done it. Caleb Douglas, I thought, really came on across the last month of the season. He was good against West Virginia. Jacoby Williams had a bright spot on that kind of pop pass. He is electric. Very, very excited about this offense and how it finished. I posted the Tim DeRuyter is fired article on Facebook from my other job. My real job. Other job. This isn't a job. This is a hobby. So I put it up, and the comments are, that's not the offensive coordinator. They fired the wrong coordinator. And I kind of screamed at this several weeks ago, and I guess it was the Baylor game, that Tech fans have some strange Stockholm syndrome where if you don't outscore the other opponent, then that's the reason you lost. Not that you gave up 59 points on defense and special teams. And for whatever reason, after watching the last 2 games of this season and watching you have a 98-yard drive on the road against an undefeated opponent that's ranked in the top 10, and then a touchdown drive against the same defense that hasn't allowed that all year to get a touchdown to win the game, and to watch the individual highlights and to see Taj Brooks succeeding for a second straight year, and to have a coach be able to coach around a bad offensive line 2 straight seasons, to finally have a quarterback healthy for 12 games, 11 and a half. It just is wild to me that Zach Kitley at 33 doesn't get as much credit as he deserves. And I've been critical of Zach Kitley at times, but Zach Kitley has done a very good job in the last season and a half, in my opinion, of learning how to run an offense that can be successful in the Big 12, and how they closed the year. I'm very excited for that offense, the RPO heavy, play action, run the ball offense, tempo. If that's what you're going to lean into, then fine, do it. That is successful. And if you want to be successful in that way, do it. You scored enough against Cincinnati to win. when the defense couldn't make a stop. He scored enough against Arizona State to win when the defense couldn't make a stop at times. There was never a game this year where I thought the offense definitely lost it for you after maybe Washington State. So, to me, it's crazy to see people say the wrong coordinator got fired. Tim DeRuyter, with all the injuries and otherwise, was not good enough this year. I don't know if I would have fired Tim DeRuyter. I agree with the firing. Obviously, that is contingent on the hire that's next. But I think we overplayed the defense in the first 2 seasons because how bad the defense had been. And I think you can be better defensively. I don't know who can do that. You've not done that in a long time. But I believe it can be done. So there's some thoughts there on Tim DeRuyter, some thoughts on Zach Kittley. Of course, we'll do more season recap stuff again on Wednesday, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. We'll also get into Micah Hudson then. But any other final thoughts on this game there, Money?
On the game, not really. On the Tim DeRuyter discussion, I have a lot of thoughts. I think, I'll put my hand up. I'll be the first to say, I think it was after the TCU game. I sat here and I said, hey, I'm okay with the change being made at both coordinators at the end of the season, regardless of how it happens, whether somebody leaves or somebody gets fired. I think I'll live with that either way. I think after the past couple of weeks, I think I've solidified my stance on, I think this is the right move. I think you had to fire Tim DeRuyter. I have a lot of thoughts about his game in general. I think he's phenomenal at drawing up really unique blitzes and incorporating the secondary into blitzes. I think that's something he's always done well, are those unique packages to apply pressure. The fact of the matter is your pass rush was not existent this year. When it was at its best is when you had guys that were checking in off like the 4 deep that were on your defensive line and were making plays. Like, I'll be real. Like, I watch every single Texas Tech football game at least once. We have a show where we come on and talk about the program twice a week. Dude, there were guys on the defensive line in that West Virginia game I'd never heard of. Like, maybe I'm the biggest casual on earth, but like you were so deep in your depth chart. And like, that's when you were looking your best. And that's just kind of head scratching to me to be like, I know you've dealt with a lot of injuries. And I think that's part of what makes this a tougher decision than I think it would have been if you were fully healthy. You were just completely battered up and down the defensive depth chart. But it never really stuck. And I felt like a weak spot for DeRuyter was always defending the quarterback run. I think that showed up against Washington State this year. The secondary has consistently been bad, and you've consistently gotten beaten there. And then it just doesn't feel like you did enough to win on that end to secure your job, to be quite frank. But I think I've talked myself into, what Zach Kittley's potential is. And look, there's a lot I want to change about Zach Kittley's offense. Like, I will be one of the first people to tell you that. I don't understand why we're still running tempo in the third quarter whenever we're up 30 points. Like, I get it. It's where you play your best. But take the play clock down to 5 seconds and waste that game away. Again, you took care of business. It's what you looked your best at. But that just feels like, I don't know, that's one thing I would want to change. I want some more diversity in the run game. And I think that's going to be harder with Taj Brooks out. Jacoby might give you something because of how quick he is. And I agree with you there, Rob, in that he showed a lot of flashes in the West Virginia game, just flying off the line of scrimmage. He's so quick on that first step. I think Cam Dickey will be a really nice piece next to him. I don't know who will be the feature back with both those guys, assuming both those guys are in your program next year. But just trying to take an objective view at things. Like, I'm actually going to try and do this. I'm going to try and share my screen. I've never done this on the show, so I probably should have tried to do this before. But you know what? I'm going to do it anyways.
There you go. Okay.
All right. So this is Game on Paper. I absolutely love their stuff. They do these spider webs. Essentially, the further out the web is, the better you are.
Okay.
Like, looking at these two graphs, it's pretty clear what the better unit was this past season. And if you're more of a raw numbers person, just kind of look at this, right? Like, your top 50 in total EPA offensively, you're 113th defensively. You were one of the worst teams against the pass this year. Again, like you said, Rob, decent against the run. You know, I think you can live with being top 100 in most categories against the run. You'd probably like to be better. But again, that's manageable. What's not manageable is finishing, 120th pretty much everywhere else. And Joey McGuire said the same thing himself. Like, he said, we're going to finish 120 in a lot of categories, and that's not acceptable. It's not good enough to win the Big 12. But when you look at these like side by side, like, I like to think I'm a pretty objective person and can take my own opinion and bias out of things. Like, this makes it pretty cut and dry what the better unit was this year, what lost you more games this year, and where I think you have a reasonable case to say, hey, if we're going to keep one of these coordinators, which one should we be? Which one should it be? Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that it's the offensive coordinator.
It is amazing that let's just average all those numbers out and say your defense was 115th. I think that's generous in some ways. Total offense, you take it down even further. But that just means the offense was that much better to be able to win some games. You lose the only game that Taj doesn't play in. You have a freak fumble from a freshman quarterback against TCU, but you still have to make the field goal, which I'm pretty confident in, and then stop TCU again, who had scored in 2 plays like 2 minutes earlier. So there's no guarantee that you would have won that TCU game anyways. You would have gone up by 2. They would have likely gotten into field goal position. I think they had a minute 20 left. So it just, like, you want to look back at some of those games and say defense, offense, whatever it is. But they call me Big Ten Rob for a reason. Right? It's legitimate. I could push back on it all I want. But I want to run the ball 60% of the time. I want to pass when it makes sense to. I want to rip play action. I want to be dynamic in the run game. I want 2 running back sets. I want to get in pistol or under center, even though nobody does that in college football anymore, under center wise. I'm an old school offensive mind. I want to slow it down. I want to run game possession. To me, that is football. But if Zach Kittley is going to be able to do tempo well, then fine. If that's what it is, and you're ripping the ball and you're still running the ball, okay, you're still doing that, and you're not throwing 17 screens a game because the run game is not working, I think that makes sense. Nathan says, tempo is dumb. It's what puts our bad defense in bad spots if it doesn't work. Yeah, but you also went 3 and out not running tempo quite a bit. And again, the offense doesn't score every time, but over the last 2 weeks, you scored well over 50% of the time. Now, you also played 2 of the defenses close to yours. And I understand that as well. But I think full season, full picture, Kittley was definitely good enough to retain his job.
And with like a terrible offensive line, like, let's just be honest. Like, you look at early down success rate, rush explosive rate, like all of those are in the tank. And you had a generational talent at running back. Like I tweeted something a few weeks ago and I was like, man, what are we going to do without Taj Brooks? And a lot of people were like, hey, if you saw Jacoby Williams and Cam Dickey, you would know. And it's like, I think both those guys are going to be really good. But Taj Brooks is one of the best talents we'll see come through this program for a while. And that's not an indictment on Texas Tech. That's not an indictment on recruiting. It's just he's that good. And he was that good at, slowing it down and making the right read behind the line of scrimmage because he wasn't finding gaps and getting out to the edge and being able to accelerate despite how heavy he is and, how much it looks like he shouldn't be able to run that fast. And just to kind of look at those numbers and see what he was able to do behind that offensive line, what this offense was able to do behind that offensive line, it makes it more impressive to me. It really does.
Realistically, there's meat on the bone for both sides to be better, but by the numbers, the side that has the most room for improvement to be competitive in the conference is the defense. Yes.
Completely agree.
I agree. That's a good assessment. I think the offense could have been better. Obviously, the defense could have been better. I don't think the offense could have been any better than the last 2 weeks, though. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, Barron doesn't throw an interception against Oklahoma State. I think and I guess the interception against West Virginia. You didn't punt against West Virginia. The only time you didn't score was the interception, yes?
Yeah, would have had to be.
I guess you had the end of the clock at the end of the game.
Yeah, did you go run downs at all that game? I don't think you did.
I don't think you went for it on fourth down, period.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say Tim DeRuyter's defense was very good on third downs. So there's that. They were very good on third downs, and they were consistent in creating turnovers at times, which I guess means they weren't consistent all the time, which would defeat the purpose of saying they were consistent. But I believe you ended over water in the turnover margin this season. It was very close for a while. You were pretty much even in the turnover margin. Do you have that?
I got a box score pulled up. I'll check it really quick.
Well, I know you finished above water at West Virginia. I just meant total
on the season. Yeah,
on the season. Yeah.
Yeah, you were +2.
Yeah. And you didn't turn the ball over nearly as much this season. I just maybe that's anecdotally as well, but you did enough to win 8 games. You haven't done that in forever. And that's not good enough to do enough to win 8 games in the long run, but in the scope of a season, with all of the injuries you had defensively, with the games people missed and otherwise offensively, your best offensive lineman, arguably Vinny Scurry, going down early in the season, game 2. I think 8-4 was a very good result. It was very good, a very good result. 6-3 in conference play, that dog will hunt. All right. You're about to go into a non-conference era, in my opinion, that is going to lead to more wins than you've had in your non-conference pretty consistently. I think you should go 3-0 in the next several conference.
God, I hope so.
If you can stack 3 or 4 6-3s, or at least average 6-3, and go 5-4 or 7-2 a couple of these seasons, you will be in the mix for Big 12 title games. That's just how it works. I think this program is heading in the right direction. Just quickly on Micah Hudson, because we're going to get roasted if we don't say anything about it. We will dig further into it on Wednesday. But I do feel like we need to say something that happened tonight. Try to collect my thoughts here. If it is another indictment on Joey McGuire. Just like we have the best quarterback room in the Big 12. We're going to be even better on the defensive line without Tyree Wilson. He's going to make an impact day one. I think you put that on the Mount Rushmore of quotes that will come back. Everything runs through Lubbock. You're going to put all those quotes on the Mount Rushmore of things that will come back to bite Joey McGuire. But you can't not say those things. And I think when you learn to read between Joey McGuire's lines, I think he wanted to promote the quarterback room because he felt like it needed promoting. I think he wanted to promote those defensive line guys because he felt like they needed promoting. And apparently he felt like Micah Hudson needed promoting as well. Micah Hudson was injured in the offseason, had surgery, missed the spring, and allegedly was injured across the back half of the season, was on the injury report with a lower body injury. From what I know, okay, he didn't practice particularly well. Didn't earn the playing time. And if you think a program should just go get a bunch of 5-stars and play them immediately, okay, go be a fan of Alabama or somebody who does that. I want to be a program that recruits guys who come here and want to earn playing time and will do anything to earn that playing time. And from all accounts, Micah Hudson did not earn playing time, and that's why he didn't play. And now he's transferring. And if you want to complain that you've lost your only 5-star receiver ever, your only 5-star recruit ever, and he's leaving the transfer portal and you're never get another one, well, you never had one before. So I don't know what to tell you. This is the Big 12, okay? This is high-level college football. It's a meritocracy. You have to earn your way onto the field. If the coaches didn't think he earned his way onto the field, he didn't. And it really does not bother me at all that Micah Hudson is planning to enter the transfer portal. Maybe I'm wrong. But I want guys who want to grind. I want the film rat. I want the guy who lives at the practice facility. I want the guy who is working hard in practice. And again, I don't know if that's Micah Hudson or not. I never heard it was. You know, during the season, did Joey McGuire call him a gym rat? Did he say he was a football freak like he called other guys? I don't know. I'm not trying to be cryptic or anything else. I'm just saying what I'm seeing from afar. That's what I saw from afar. He's leaving. He never played for you, really, and now he's gone. And if he goes and turns into an all-world performer somewhere else, it's too bad. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. It wasn't my money they spent in NIL to get him here. It's not my money they'll spend on NIL for the next guy. It is what it is. Just give me the players on the roster at the beginning of next season, and let's go to work. That's what I say.
I think we're in pretty general agreement on this. You know, at the beginning of the season, I think I got kind of annoyed with the conversation because it felt like it was a really easy thing to try and attribute Texas Tech's issues to. But after a full season body of work, I don't really know how not playing another receiver was, the detriment of your season or what led to 4 losses. And I think that kind of tapered off towards the back end of the year. Maybe it was because he was injured or listed as injured, and that's part of the reason that conversation dissipated. But I think that kind of turned me off at first. Not saying that has anything to do with Micah Hudson. I just kind of initially thought, all right, this is not going to be a serious conversation from the get-go because there's so much more wrong than just this. So if I look at this in a vacuum, with that aside, and I look at this in a vacuum, I think Micah Hudson is really, really good at football. At least that seemed to be the case in high school. It seemed to be the stuff that I saw in flashes, the one-handed catch. But if there's a reason he is not playing, I have to believe that the guys who are coaching him every single day and are with him every single day are seeing something to keep him off the field that I, as a fan just sitting on my couch, cannot see. I have to believe that. Like, it's just, again, like being objective about it and trying to factor in some common sense into things. Like that seems to be the most reasonable explanation in my mind. There was something that was not allowing him to get on the field, whatever it may be. And I have to believe that reason was valid. And so again, I think Micah Hudson is really, really talented. I think he'll probably be really, really good at his next stop. Do I think that one wide receiver not playing was the thing that held Texas Tech back this year? No. Do I think that this is a detrimental departure that will crush Texas Tech in recruiting for years to come? No. Do I think that you'll find a good receiver in the portal this year who will get good yards and be a good contributor to your football team next year? I do. And so I guess that's a really long-winded way to say, I think this guy's really talented. I really wish he would have seen the field more as a Red Raider. But to be sober-minded about it and to really think about it, there has to be a reason why he wasn't. There just has to be.
Has to be. And you can come up with a million probable reasons. I'm not going to speculate on that. But
it's just the fact of the matter, right? Like,
it's just the facts. And if that's what you're trying to do, now, if you want to live in freak out world, you can. That's the fun part about being a fan. I choose not to live in that world. Next man up, right? What's next, as Joey McGuire would say. It just unrelated, but related. If I was a college football GM like Andrew Luck, now the GM at Stanford, and I was in charge of roster building, I would tell my recruiting staff to go recruit as many freshmen out of high school, 4 or 5-star defensive linemen, edge rushers, offensive tackles, offensive linemen as possible. 10 a class. A piece. I don't care. Go get a bunch of them. I would maybe a corner safety in high school, maybe a running back in high school, a quarterback probably out of the high school world, Everything else, I want transfers. That's just the new world. I wouldn't care, money, if Texas Tech never got another high school recruit at wide receiver in the history of Texas Tech for the rest of the world. Just go get transfers. I think that's the one position specifically that can come in here and you can look at their tape. They've already grown as much as they're going to grow. They've already bulked as much as they're going to bulk. You don't have to do any of that. But can you think of a transfer that came in? Now, maybe Jordan Brown is this or Dre McCray is this. I don't think they had as much success as they predicted to come in, but those guys didn't really have success before they got here. Well, Dre McCray at the lower level certainly did. But if you go back and look at all the transfer wide receivers in the last couple of seasons here in Texas at Texas Tech, they've all been hits pretty much. Josh Kelly, great hit. 1,000-yard receiver. Caleb Douglas?
Yeah, that's the thing. And there was limited stuff on his tape. But even getting that amount of D1 high-level college football tape is a good testament to how things are going to pan out.
Reginald Turner, I thought was a really good transfer in. And now more than ever, you can go get Power 4 transfers out of the wide receiver world. I mean, Indiana went and got Miles Price from Texas Tech. I think there's a world here where you live in the portal for skill positions and you home grow the trenches. Maybe you go get an edge rusher too in the portal because you need it. But I really just feel like you've had way more busts on the offensive line than anywhere else in the transfer portal. I would love to see Caden Carr, Fatig, all these young offensive linemen play next year alongside Sheridan Wilson and Vinny Scurry, and just live with that. Ellis Davis, just go and grow those young guys. They're going to be in year 3, 4, 2 of the program, and just transfer portal the hell out of everything else. And I think you can do it. I think you have the NIL infrastructure. And if you have a program, money, that guys know they can come in as a transfer and put in the work, and it's all football, right? And we're not just giving these 5-star freshmen everything because they're 5-star freshmen. Because a lot of the reason these older guys are leaving is because they're bringing in new guys that are just going to have to play, because if you don't play the young guy, they're going to leave too. So I think there's some programs that are going to focus on getting high-level high school recruits in. They have to play them immediately. They're going to play these freshmen. And then let's say a senior from Ohio State that was a 4-star 4 years ago, is now going to be on the open market. We'll go get him. Go get the junior that was overlooked because he was a low 4-star instead of a high 5-star, and the freshman played over him. Go get that guy. So I don't know. I'm not crying about Micah Hudson. I wish he would have worked out here. That would have been really cool. I wish he would have played this year. That would have been really cool. But I don't look at our wide receiver room and say, man, he should have played over that guy. I just don't. I think the guys that started were productive. And I don't know that he would have been more productive than any of them. Now, maybe the 4th or 5th guy that were coming in at wide receiver, he would have been more productive than. But they didn't put him on the field. And like you said, Occam's razor is probably a reason. And it's probably a pretty simple reason.
Especially for all of that is just in a vacuum. And I think it's super valid. That's the most objective way to think about it. But if you want to get speculative and kind of zoom out and think about larger things that could have factored into this, Joey McGuire knows recruiting. He lives and breathes recruiting. He knows, especially coming from the high school ranks, he knows how important playing time is for guys when they're considering a destination at the next level. So if you want to factor in what he knows about recruiting and his recruiting approach, and that didn't alter his decision. He didn't feel like whatever was happening that was keeping Micah Hudson off the field was enough to, take that chance on the trail. Like that kind of tells me something too. And I think if you go back and you kind of look at who are the guys over the past couple of years, and maybe we can do this on Wednesday a little bit more in depth, but the guys that Texas Tech has recruited to play receiver out of high school, you've certainly hit on a few. I think one is Coy Aiken, who by all means was a shot clock buzzer flyer that you took after what he did for Stephenville in the playoffs. But you go back and look at a guy like Jaron Bradley and guys like Loic Fungi, and even after they've sought greener pastures, they haven't done much. And you look at guys who kind of were at Texas Tech, saw the field, got some flashes, guys like, Miles Price, even Jalen Polk. He didn't do a ton at Tech, but he at least had some high-level D1 competitive football tape. And those guys panned out well. I just think there's so much value in experience in college football in general at this point, but especially at a position where there's so much detail that goes into playing receiver. You have generational talents like Ryan Williams who just have the release and the hands to just win any ball. But most of the time it's going to be how good is your footwork? How clean can you run your routes? Can you catch balls in traffic? Can you catch balls over your shoulder? Can you catch balls across the middle? There are so many factors that go into it that, man, it makes a lot of sense for there to be tape on a guy like that if you're going to take the chance.
Just to, be forthright here, one of us on the Gauchos preseason thought, they looked at Hudson's frame and injuries and didn't play in the spring and thought there was potential that he would redshirt or at least play late in the season and not early. Somebody said that preseason. He was laughed at and ridiculed and scolded. He did play in more than 4 games, so he won't be able to redshirt. I don't know. Maybe they listed him on the injury report so he could apply for a medical and go somewhere else with all his eligibility. But that did happen preseason. So Chase says the transfer talk sounds like Matt Wells' philosophy. Matt Wells, to his credit, was ahead of the game. And if he had recruited 5 more bodies out of high school in his tenure and gotten the same amount of recruits in and turned over some more misses, he would have built a fine roster. And I think he did, because Joey McGuire won 7 games with it, and they went to a bowl his final season without him. He was building a good roster. He just couldn't coach. So, Matt Wells was doing fine roster building. Fine. I don't think he was doing good.
He got guys, that's for sure. There's no arguing with that.
And he hit a bunch of portal guys. He did. I thought he evaluated well. He just didn't do enough of it. He didn't get enough of those guys in. But I mean, your best 5 players in the last 3 seasons, give me the best 5 players from the last 3 seasons. Tyree Wilson, Taj Brooks,
Barron,
Rabbit. Barron's probably in there.
Rodriguez, I know the injury last year hurt, but
yeah, Rodriguez this year you don't win without him. Was Rodriguez brought in after Wells?
I can never remember. I want to say it was Wells last year.
Was this his fourth season in the Olympic? He didn't play his first year?
Let me check it.
Either way, yeah, and then Josh Kelly would be right there as well. So there's 5 or 6, but a bunch of them are Wells guys. So I don't know. It just it is what it is. I think you're still rebuilding. I think you're still building under McGuire, and I think in the next 3 years, all your best players will be McGuire guys. But we'll still have to see. And I think a lot of transfers have come here and been really good. But you've hit on some freshmen too, and I hope those guys improve quickly, because you'll need to. All right, on Wednesday, we will dive deeply into what we want out of the portal season. We'll also talk about any coaching openings, who we would want, what we want in a new defensive coordinator for Texas Tech. We'll dive more into the Micah Hudson deal. I told you at the top of the show we weren't going to talk all about it, and then we spent 20 minutes on it, but it is what it is. Kyle will also have thoughts on Wednesday. He has a lot of thoughts already on Twitter, so and the Discord. If you want Kyle's thoughts on Micah Hudson, go in the Discord, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. He has written a dissertation there in the Discord in comment form, so you can go back and read a bunch of that as well. It really is an exciting time. Money, I want to start a new bit here that will hopefully only last through, let's say, New Year's Day, but may last the next month in December. All right, I want Money's basketball minute because you did play against Northern Colorado.
Yeah, like I mentioned briefly earlier in the show, sweat-free game. Thought you played really well. I think you still have questions at point guard and what you're going to do there. I think there's a legitimate conversation to be had about Christian Anderson becoming a starter. It's kind of crazy, kind of unconventional to what I would typically say. But right now, the offense is operating better with him at the one as opposed to Hawkins, which is really, really surprising to me. Doesn't mean that can't change. It just seems to be the case as it stands right now. I think Hawkins obviously brings a lot more playmaking to your team than Anderson, but man, his shot is pure. I think it's NBA level good, especially if he can speed up the bottom half of his shot. His footing always looks like it takes an extra second to get in place, but if he can speed that up, I legitimately think he'll be an NBA shooter. But yeah, stress-free game. You've got DePaul coming up this week. DePaul, undefeated, probably one of the most notable stories in college basketball this year. Off to a 7-0 start after winning 3 games all of last season. Credit to Chris Holtman and the job he's doing there early. Their numbers are really, really good. They're shooting the ball really, really well, pretty much everywhere on the floor. Also playing really good defense. The only thing is they have played absolutely nobody, which is the thing I think a lot of people are overlooking right now. The best game on their schedule right now is against Duquesne, who was 230th in KenPom. So they've played absolutely nobody. Their numbers are really, really good, but the models still give them only about a 10% chance at a victory on Wednesday against Texas Tech. So, hey, look, they're third in the country in effective field goal percentage. They're shooting 41% from deep, holding opponents to 27% from deep. The numbers are really, really good, and it could be uncomfortable on Wednesday, but I don't think it will be. I don't think this DePaul team has enough skins on the wall quite yet. And I think Texas Tech running into some adversity against St. Joe's and Syracuse will probably do them well in this contest.
All right. Anything else? Final thoughts?
What a season. It was wild. We still got a bowl game left to play, but crazy regular football season.
Shoot your shot on the bowl game potential.
Ooh. I'm terrible at keeping up with the actual names of the bowls because they change every year, and that's too much for me. Solid draw where you were playing Nebraska. I think that would be hilarious for a lot of reasons. Would love that.
The Rate Bowl in Phoenix.
Okay. It's not a bad travel game either.
It is the 26th of December, I believe.
Oh, that sucks. I think I saw Texas Bowl against Arkansas. That would be fun. Would not hate that. Who knows what that program's going to do with their staff. But I think those are the two that have enticed me. I know there's some chatter about A&M, but I think they'll probably get a more generous bowl than you will.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
It probably depends, who's going to make the bowl. But you remember the one time you played LSU in 15 or 16?
Yeah.
That should have been A&M, but they gave A&M the better bowl, so they didn't have to play Texas Tech, and then you had to play somebody that should have been in a better bowl because they, did that. So I don't know. Maybe now that they're playing Texas, they get back into the Texas Bowl, and they don't care if it's Texas Tech. But if you're just looking at standings and trying to add up who is in what bowl based on Big 12 standings, you do need to do a little mental gymnastics because the Pac-12 schools additions still have Pac-12 bowl ties that they have to complete. So if Iowa State wins and goes to the playoff, you could potentially see Arizona State in the Alamo Bowl as the Pac-12 school. And then a Big 12 school they didn't play this year, play them in the bowl game. Or Colorado and BYU play in the Alamo Bowl as the Pac-12 Big 12 draw. So there's all that kind of strange work. I believe the bowl in San Diego, the Holiday Bowl, could be a Big 12 Pac-12 matchup that includes a Big 12 game. I don't know. Maybe they get Washington State against a Big 12 team. So it has some options there as a conference still. And I guess that extends to Washington and UCLA. Nope, not a bowl team. USC didn't make a bowl game either, did they? I don't know. They got beat by Notre Dame. Notre Dame had 2 pick sixes from 100 yards. Oh, you hate to see it. Lincoln Riley to the Bears. Who says no? You think he would go be an offensive coordinator in the NFL?
He should. Whether he will or not, I guess, is the question, though.
Because if you have to run a college offense if you want Caleb Williams to be good. And I think that Lincoln Riley offense fits the NFL. It's a power run scheme.
Yeah.
And you throw to open guys. I don't know. It just seems like a pro-style offense to me, at least in the new world of professional football. One more note. Neil Brown did get fired after the West Virginia game. They were 1-5 against the Red Raiders in his tenure. Texas Tech now 7-7 against West Virginia all-time, I believe. I think you retied with Baylor this season because they beat you. Or did they go back up 1? I think you retied with Oklahoma State, potentially, after you beat them. Anyways, Pat McAfee tweeted earlier that he'd been on the phone with Ren Baker trying to get something exciting to happen. What would be exciting for Pat McAfee to be in the know about? And B, I know he played there and he doesn't really seem locked into West Virginia I mean, he talks about him a bit, but it doesn't seem like he's like all in on the Big 12. He should be more. We should have an ally there. He has Nick Saban on his show weekly. He's a West Virginia native. That would be an interesting deal after he just said the Big 12 sucked to go to the Big 12 as a coach. Maybe he thinks he could win it every year because he thinks it sucks. There are a few other guys he played with that are now coaches. Rocco Becht's dad is a coach in the coaching world. He played at West Virginia. He could come home to coach West Virginia and bring his son along with him. Though neither of those quarterbacks looked good in that Kansas State-Iowa State game last night. I don't know. I don't know what West Virginia will do, but apparently Pat McAfee thinks it's going to be special.
I would hire Andy Kotelnicki.
He has been interviewed. And
that's what I would do.
I think that would be a very good hire. Very good hire. I love that offense. Love that offense. Big fan of the offense. And he's making $1 billion already as far as coordinators go. I think he's one of the highest paid coordinators in the country. I wonder if even if they lose to Oregon, they potentially are still in the playoff. I wonder if he would leave earlier, kind of do split duties. That would be interesting to see what happens there with Kotelnicki and Penn State. Otherwise, I think that's about it from us. We're going to have like a 3-hour episode on Patreon Wednesday, so it's going to be ridiculous. There's a massive mailbag. Obviously, to get through all this portal stuff, talk about Tim DeRuiter some more. It's going to be a big one. So join in. Patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. By the way, the final home game for Texas Tech was this weekend. You will not play at home again, but just really special vibes. It was on a packed house because it was Thanksgiving weekend. People ask me how to get more people to the Jones on Thanksgiving weekend. You know, Lubbock's a special place, money, but people come to Texas Tech from all over. And Lubbock to Texas Tech students is certainly feeling like home while they're here, but then they go back home, right, to Dallas or the DFW, wherever else, all across the great state of Texas. It's not like the state of Alabama, where you're in Tuscaloosa for school, but you go back to Montgomery, and then you can drive back over for the game on Thanksgiving with all your family. It's a big state, and people come from all over to come to Texas Tech. So I understand why the students were light, but I thought the students were great all year. I would be fine with not playing a home game to end the season often. I think you could get away from that quite a bit. But while you're playing home games, I think the people that show up really do make it feel special. It's a special atmosphere. It always has been. It always will be. And it's the people of Lubbock that make it that way. I would encourage you to come check us out, even if it's not during a game. There was a guy who tweeted at the Gamblin Gauchos from Kansas State who came down to watch a game with his buddy, came down to watch the West Virginia game. He said he really enjoyed it. The Jones is better than it's ever been. I think the city of Lubbock is better than it's ever been. It's growing. It's got all the amenities you need. We don't have Disney World, but we certainly have hospitable people to make it feel great. The food, the entertainment, you can do everything you need to do right here in Lubbock. Learn more at visitlubbock.org and learn why Lubbock is so special and why the atmosphere at games, even when it's light, is so special. The fans were really, really good this year. And I know Joey McGuire wants to have a better home record for the fans. He said as much in his recent press conference. Money, do you know the Bills score?
They were running away with it the last time I checked.
Did you take
after McCaffrey went down?
Did you take the Bills or the Ravens or the 49ers there?
Believe I had the Bills.
Okay. So this is in our Picks with Friends. Money. You had the Ravens.
Unfortunately.
I had the Eagles. We both had the Bills. I'm 80 and 58. You're 82 and 56. So I will finally have gained one game on you. I think I've been down 2 to you for a month. I will finally have gained one game on you going into the home stretch. Coming,
yeah,
Money.
If Justin Tucker could kick it into the ocean right now, Ravens would have at least covered that 3.5, and I would have only gone down. Only missed on one game this weekend. He's toast, man. Yeah, he's got to hang him up. No question.
What's his kicking percentage since Travis Kelce and Mahomes punked him in the end zone?
I saw a tweet about that today.
That was awesome. All right, that's it from us. Bill's cruising, Chris says. Yeah, I think it was 21-6 or whatever the last time I saw. I was just checking in on it. Crazy things happen. We will see Wednesday, as I said. Shout out to Visit Lubbock. Shout out to Barnett Howard Williams. Shout out to Be Real. My final thought is, if you're losing sleep over an 18-year-old kid's decision on where to play football, reassess. Let the coaches lose sleep on that. Let Brian Nance and James Blanchard lose sleep on that. It's not your job. Worry about your own life. But be a crazy fan. I don't care. If that's what you want to do, do it. If you want to take the other approach, do that. Not going to tell you how to fan, but your life is more enjoyable when you're not consternating excessively during portal season. It's going to be a wild ride. Joey McGuire said you're getting 10 guys in the portal. Then he listed 12 spots that they need. I would assume you get 14 or more. I think you'll lose 10 or more.
Yeah, Jalen Peoples hit the portal as we were recording.
He really struggled in his time on the field early. He was one of Joey's first recruits.
Mm-hmm. Cedar Hill guy too, right? I think.
Yep. He was either the first or second, and I believe both of those guys are now gone. But it is what it is. All right. Let's end it there with 1,900 people in the live here. And we will see you guys on Wednesday for a very special Patreon episode. I think I plugged that like 17 times here. Love you.